So for people who joined us, we will do this interactive communication, and I will share once again the link to a Miro board. So you can open in your browser while I'm sharing my screen so you can see what we're doing. And I know for people who first time doing this, it might be a bit complicated. So I'm going to be here to help you out. So you can ask your questions in a chat window in Zoom. To everyone and to me, my name is Natalie Mandrico. Any technical questions you have, I'm here to answer. I think we can kind of soft start this event. So my name is Natalie Mandrico. I am a co-organizer for Miro chapter in Washington, D.C., but obviously we're doing all things virtual now, so we don't have a geo boundaries anymore for this chapter. And I had a great conversation with people within the product management communities, and the idea was born like, why not to have a product book club? And we took Empowered Book, and we have Tina here to help us and Scott to go through discussions while I'm here to support you guys through Miro board experience. That's my spiel. So I think, Tina, do you want to start with?
Yeah, sure, absolutely, absolutely. As Natalie said, I'm Tina Howell, and I was voluntold from a friend of mine that I needed to participate in this in this book club. Actually, this is probably we've done a half a dozen book clubs over the course of this wonderful pandemic of ours, and it's been fabulous. Great learnings, met some great people. I think a lot of us been around the Cagan books, and just because they are very impactful, and I know I've got some familiar faces on there, but I'm really here just as more of a facilitator. We have a set of questions on the board, and Natalie will go to those questions. We'll talk through those, and it really is just an open dialogue. My partner in crime here, Mr. Scott Evans, Scott and I have done this a few times together. So I tee up the question, and then he basically knocks it out of the ballpark. And he picks on his friends like Stephanie and Chris. And so with that, Mr. Evans.
Yeah, so this is kind of cool. So when Empowered came out, a lot of us were going through the Inspired. So I'm guessing most of us went through Inspired, right? And it was such an amazing narrative around product development, and it got really crisp and crystallized with the roles and how the organization kind of operates. But then Empowered came out, and I started digging into it, and I was just impressed on how it softened some of that stuff and talked about the coaching and talked about just kind of how we want to, like, what the mindset looks like now. And then Natalie was the one that really posted, hey, we should do a book club. And then I said, yeah, we should do that. And now here we are. So it's the Enterprise Digital Product Leader. I'm currently moving to another organization right now. More to come on that. But we just want to build a community around this new book, around product, meet some new friends, and have a really good time talking about what it feels like to be product minded inside of your world, what you would like to see, what you wish would be different, or if you've got some type of utopia we can all learn from, that would be an amazing thing too, right? I see Mike kind of smiling there. Maybe he's got utopia or he's looking for one too. But maybe, Tina, we just jump into the questions because we only have an hour, and let's get into it. Is that fair?
So typically how we do these Kagan book clubs is we do it by part. So usually we do it one part every session. This particular one, we're going to kick it off talking about parts 1 and 2, given that being a big Inspired fan, he really built off of lessons learned from the top companies. So we're going to just start with part 1 and cover part 2 tonight. There is a lot of content here, and by leveraging the boards, this content will stay here, and we want you to continue to engage and have conversations and connect. And that's the intent of this. We'll continue to build on these boards as we go through these sessions. So in part 1, really, we had 8 chapters in there, and it was really all about what he calls the 3 critical critically important differences between strong product companies and everybody else. And I think the first and foremost, obviously, is how do they view the role of technology? So I work within a consulting organization working on product transformation, project to product, agile transformation, and it's always really interesting as we go in and we talk to the organization, we ask them, what is the role of technology in your organization? And unfortunately, more times than not, they say, well, they provide a service if we're talking to the business, or they say, well, we service the business if I'm talking to IT. So how does a company view the role of technology? I mean, anybody, what are some of your thoughts, your comments? I'll pick on people. I'll start with one of my favorites.
I can jump in. I can throw my hat in the ring here. So I put that big yellow sticky right there. So yeah, definitely tech serves the business, you know, and I've been in consulting for 20 years and hardcore, you know, project program management guy, and I have reformed a lot of that command and control style, so that when I go into a legacy organization, which I am at now, and yeah, they definitely talk a lot about, you know, how can these developers push back on taking on all this work? Don't they know they're here to serve the business? Wow. And you know, I pride myself on creating great teams, and the subhead of this book blew me away because it's ordinary people, extraordinary products, and that's really what it's all about. It's like you just got to get good people, continuous learning, continuous improvement, and create a nice rapport and bond within the team, and you know, do that work of discovery, which obviously you guys, you know, having worked with Inspired and understanding the primacy of things like prototypes and doing discovery up front with tech, product, and UX, you know, all these things. And those are like basics in my toolbox. I go into an organization and, you know, you still bump up against some of this stuff. So, but, you know, we're just here to win hearts and minds, one team at a time and one executive at a time.
I think one thing I noticed in my career is I was an IT person for the first 12 years. And then I worked in companies like Sony Music. When I finally got to Google, it was the first time I was treated as the product as opposed to the reason, like just a cost to the business. Like I often say that I was no longer a red line, I was the black line, right? Like in the budget. Yep. And that's the first time I ever experienced that in my career. As a person who came from IT is always looked at as a red line. And then engineering, starting in the beginning of my transition into engineering, definitely was treated that way, was told that. And I went to Google by being acquired from Zagat, where literally we were shown what our cost was in the annual year, and then went to Google where we were the reason that the company existed, which was a very different experience. Like it was like night and day. Going from one office to the other was this amazing experience.
So Robbie, I have a question for you. So that is amazing. I love that whole journey there. So can you maybe share with us, what did that actually feel like? You know, so you kind of touched on it a little bit. And so I think for this audience here, for some of us, so I would like to know, like, so what did it feel like to you personally, you know, in one model, and then how liberating or how did it unlock innovative, I mean, what did it really do for you?
Yeah, I think one interesting aspect is, like, I also have a gluten allergy, and they were providing lunch when we got acquired. And so one of our admins came by and they were like, is everything okay? How come you're not getting lunch? And I'm like, oh, I have a gluten allergy. And they were like, oh, we'll take care of it. So the next day, everything came and was labeled with like at Google, everything is labeled with any allergens. So they were like, oh, sorry, we didn't even think about that. And like the next day it was taken care of. So it creates this really interesting feedback of like, you feel a little bit like you're taking advantage, especially at the beginning, because in our case, like we were not used to that. And then it just becomes second nature. I think the thing that I realized is, as somebody who joined Google in their 30s through an acquisition, I was very cognizant of not feeling like it was an entitlement. You know, the people who make your food and the people who are the security guards, they're there to make your life better, right? I taught a class called Life of an Engineer, and it wasn't about writing code. It was about how to succeed at Google. And it was all the tools around your world. And one of the slides I added in was like, in Google, there are 3 different color badges. A white badge is a full-time employee. A red badge is a temp vendor or contractor. And a green badge is an intern. And I said, anybody wearing a red badge's life is dedicated to helping you be productive if you're wearing a white badge. So like, you should be super enthusiastic that they're here, but you should also treat them nicely. Like, their job is to make your life easier and better, you know? But that's not the way that everybody sees it when you get there initially.
So you're talking about missionaries versus mercenaries, you know?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody else? That is so cool. I think we should come back to that at some point. I love that narrative. Anybody else?
Hey, I'm Sabina. So I was kind of like I'm currently working in a tech company, and there the developers and any tech people are viewed like gods, which is great. And it was total change culture and approach from consulting and working for like an industry part of the IT team. Because like I totally agree with you totally points in terms of when you work for a company, yes, you're looked as expense and kind of a slave of like whatever business says, that's what we're gonna do, and we're just serving that business that's bringing the money. But it's very different when you work for a technology company. It switched the roles completely.
So now we have on the call here Stephanie Wyndham, who works in actual agri-science. So they have it's kind of a different product set. So they actually have very physical products that get spread out all over the world, right? And then they have technologies that are helping the use of those products. So what about your world, Stephanie? You mean, is IT a service or is it a partner?
It is definitely a service. It's a company of about 20,000 employees across the world. And that's one of the biggest challenges is how do we change that mindset? So I would be really interested in hearing from anybody here that's either been in a company that has changed that mindset or knows of a company that has made that change, and how what were some of the things that helped foster that along, because that is a really big challenge that we have right now.
Nice. Okay.
I can talk to it, Scott, because hi Sabina. So we used to work together. So, and when I worked for this tech company that treated the engineers as gods, I've been asked to consult a Fortune 500 that had the same issues. So the IT was a service and they had a CIO. And the time that I joined this consulting work, they created a separate structure and they call it digital transformation, whatever. So like a CD, digital transformation versus a CIO. And throughout the 1 year period, they kind of dropped CIO. Actually, CIO left. And the leader from the digital transformation organization became one leader for both, for legacy organization as well as for digital department. And that was painful.
I bet.
Sounds very painful.
I think I'd like to maybe move on a little bit, Scott, if we can. The other two differences, critically important differences, was really the role of the product leaders themselves. And these are the leaders, not necessarily project management per se, on the ground, boots on the ground manager, but the actual leaders themselves. And then that second is the purpose of the product teams and how they view that. Is there anything in that area that you'd like to unpack a little bit?
Leadership. Let's talk.
Yeah.
Yep. Let's talk about
a lot of the content, following this kind of the teeing up of the roles and the critical roles that Cagan talks about. It's all about the tools and the techniques, and at the end of the day, what is our role as a leader, and that being of a coach.
Yeah, so let me share a little bit about how I landed here too. So as the enterprise digital product leader, that sounds like you would have all the backing, right? The organization's kind of investing in that whole thing. This product transformation, we went through the agile transformation. Now we're going through this product thing, but how critical is it that you actually have leadership buy-in for this? I think we all know the answer, but let's just talk about it for a second. Sarah,
Very critical.
What's that?
I said very critical, because some employees tend to look to their leaders for that guidance and support, and if they're not sure that their leader is supporting product transformation, then they're not sure that they need, to spend their time and their investment in it.
Does that stop you though? This is a
It
question I
shouldn't.
have often. Does that stop things, or what does that really do? So, leadership, Mike.
So I think what I see is that if, like, there's this notion that you can sell a digital or agile transformation and everything can happen at the team level and everything else is business as usual. The fiefdoms and silos can persist. Nothing else has to change, right? And I think what this book lays out is that really kind of everything has to change. And then I think that first level is when agile comes in, managers are like very hands off. And it's like, it's not that you need less management, you need better quality management. You need that kind of like management that sets out that vision and that context. And then people are empowered to go ahead and make that, like, it, sort of make that happen. And I think there's a lack of trust. I think there's a lot of using outsourced people or offshore people of a very sort of low grade. And there's not these like sentient, passionate missionaries that really want to deliver something on behalf of the customers. So there's a lot of things locked up there, but I think the biggest thing is that it really has to be an organizational wide transformation. And so much of our time as agile coaches is spent coaching at the leadership level, not undoing the good work of continuous improvement and psychological safety that we're instilling in these teams.
And Chris, Mr. Warner, you've seen a lot of this, right? That was.
Is there something specific? Yeah, I've seen a ton of this. I work with it every day.
Yeah. So how does that, when you see this, I mean, how unempowering does that make the teams feel, right? So Robbie shared a very empowering story around going from Zygot to Google, right? And that experience. And I'm going to guess, Robbie, that innovative ideas were flowing, right? Because, you were kind of like ready just to get at it, wake up. So Chris, when share with us an environment where you don't have that and what it feels like, maybe.
Yeah, and so what I would say is, I mean, if you saw Robbie's face and that excitement and that glint, right, that's what it should be. And unfortunately, I think that in a lot of organizations, especially if we're talking about leaders, they really do mean well, right? But they're constrained. And those constraints are either their leaders or the environment, and trying to understand how to meld that, right? How do we encourage teams and yet make it realistic? It is really difficult. And so, and as transformation consultants, sometimes we probably do a little bit of a disservice, right? We come in and we're pie in the sky, and we try to talk about where we want to go and where they could be. And we talk about great product and design and how this is going to change your world. And then they start hitting the constraints. And then we fall back on, well, we'll meet you where we're at. And sometimes it's really difficult then, right? So I think the key is, how do we have really open and transparent conversations about, hey, where are we? And how are we going to work together to get to where we are? And having good leaders that understand product and that are willing to go on that journey is really what's key, because we won't all have that environment where we can just open the floodgates and make it happen the way we want. That's rare. It's a thing of beauty, but it's rare.
Yeah, but all you got to do, Chris, right, is just get a one-on-one with every leader, coach them for an hour, and you should be good, right?
Yeah, because all you have to do is talk about it, and it will magically happen, right? So, much like when we say, oh yeah, just let the teams do it, they'll do it just fine. Right. Yeah, unfortunately, it's a combination.
Yeah. And then, so what I really loved about this book, and this was the very first comment that I put about it on LinkedIn, was the emphasis on coaching and what that felt like. When times are hard in organizations, what do they normally cut the first? We don't need any more coaching. We just need to go do some stuff. We just, they begin to like devalue that. But how important is coaching? And maybe somebody out there, maybe give me a definition of what coaching really A definition of coaching. Who'd like to try that? What is a coach?
I think it's somebody who has lived it, has been there, done that, and has made the mistakes and can basically ask you questions so that you can prevent the same mistakes that they've done and learn from your own mistakes.
Right, drawing them away from the tides. Right, you know enough. You've been there. Anybody else?
Yeah, there's a great coaching model. Christina Wodke wrote a book called The Team That Managed Itself, and she talks about the GROW model of coaching. That's really powerful. I'll see if I can drop a link into that. But I think it really is. I think it's extremely accurate the way Jose laid it out. But it is really kind of working with that person in their context. And I think the thing is that the coach doesn't have to have all the answers. It really is that they can kind of make a connection. They can get people to be thoughtful about what they're doing and arrive at their own answers at their own time. Sometimes there's that ability to kind of get them to stretch a little bit beyond what they currently believe that they're capable of. And that kind of advocacy is extremely powerful. So
that's amazing. Yep. Stephanie, how important is coaching?
Extremely important. I can tell you that. What I've experienced where I'm at is people attend a workshop and learn about product and what it is to be a product organization, but then how do you take that information back to what you do and apply that? And I don't see any way possible without having that coaching.
Yep. Anybody else? So what's the difference between, question for the group, what's the difference between consulting, mentoring, and coaching? Who wants to try that one?
I think with consulting, it's more like theory and you create a plan. It's often the next phase is implementation, which could be part of consulting. But I feel like coaching is more hands-on and like actually following step by step and saying what did you do right and what's wrong.
Yeah, so you can think of it this way. And Cagan touches on it briefly, but consulting is really tell me, mentoring is show me, and coaching is guide me, right? So that's really that journey, and it's all very important. But when you have what Cagan is talking about in this book here is that true coaching kind of perspective, and it's like, where can I guide these individuals to go? So Robbie, in your experience, when you went from one company to the other, did you feel a difference in coaching, or you went from an expense to something different? What did that feel like?
Yeah, I think what was interesting is they kept us sort of siloed together. So Zagat stayed under one umbrella for a little while. So we had the same manager until we eventually started to break up. So it took about 6 months for that transition to start happening for us. And that was very, very different. Like once I reported to somebody different in the organization, and it was much more about like Google is such an OKR-based company. Just sort of getting your head around like, how do you measure things? How do you measure your impact? Was very different than the way we thought about things in the Zagat world, which was like, we're going to modernize this website that is driven by this CMS, as opposed to we're going to change how the world thinks about commenting and user-generated content, right? Like it's a very different mindset of the approach of what we were trying to accomplish.
Can you coach what you haven't experienced?
I don't think effectively. I think that's probably a very difficult aspect. I think you can consult, you can read best practices and probably make a plan. But coaching and mentoring, I think, has to come from hard-won experience and feeling the feels, right, of the experience.
So did anybody else pick up on the theme that, for product owners, product managers, and for any other discipline, engineering, they should probably be managed by someone who's lived in that world so they can get that coaching, right? Because they've lived it and experienced it. So anybody in any of your organizations have like leaders who have never done the job and they're leading big groups of people that are trying to do a job? What does that look and feel like?
Scott, I can share like back to my client Fortune 50. So it was so interesting to see that they invite Kagan and they trained the most bright product owners to become become product managers basically. And I watched one very bright product manager, but she didn't have previous experience, and she's been tasked to do a pilot on very visible project. She was so nervous. She was so confused. So I felt that she didn't have support she needs, even though she went through the training, but she was lacking a coach behind her to make sure that she's okay, even though it's so terrifying to do it. So I guess my story is this: training is not enough, and to provide support, the people they need to have human beings with them as they go through new experiences. But knowing that, like, I don't know how feasible is to have it within the organization. So I guess my thinking that it might be outside of the company, that we need to find the appropriate people for our people being supported.
Yep. Tina, how do you respond to that?
I think, and true, and as I think just as a coach and more of a leadership coach, there's certain aspects of, I can coach you. I may not have walked in your shoes as a engineer, but there's other aspects of your development that I can coach you in. So, and to Natalie's point, it doesn't have, your organization doesn't have to be perfectly established where you have this product management practice where you are developed as a product manager by a product manager, because not all of us have that. That is to me almost utopia. But you can work toward that. And so it's finding that support externally but being intentional about it. I think that's the biggest thing, is being intentional about it. We're, honestly, things like this, we're coaching each other too. So you have a community and you got to take it on yourself, which kind of leads into the next, and we're kind of going all over, but this first part two, there's a lot of content here. I'd like to talk a little bit about the assessment. He introduces the notion of an assessment. And, back in my day when I did have a group of engineers, assessing them in their skills, assessing them in their soft skills, their hard skills, everything else, but more importantly, I was more focused on where they wanted to go. What path did they want to take? Did they want to lead a group of engineers, or did they want to continue to be individual contributors? And I worked so hard to develop a job family, for lack of a better term, so that they could progress in their career on the path that they wanted to take. So that individual contributor could go from engineering to architecture, or whatever that case may be. But so assessments, let's just talk a little bit about what you thought of Kagan's definition of the assessments that he does with new product managers, how he does it. I thought he personally did a really good job laying out a tool that you could use not only with your team, but even self-assess yourself, right? Create your own development plan. If sometimes we got to take this stuff on ourselves, right? Thoughts? Quiet.
Who likes assessments? But are assessments a vital tool in trying to just get a understanding of where individuals are at in teams, product teams? Are they useful?
Maybe assessment isn't a good word. We can come up with a better word. But at the end of the day, you got to have a baseline. And personally, I mean, even yourself, where do I sit today, and where do I want to go? And so maybe assessment is a bit of a rough word.
I mean, are you currently leveraging assessments of different types to kind of assess where, some of your folks are at? Anybody?
We're doing like an agile health maturity assessment, but in this version of it, I think we need to be a little more. I think what's so great about Marty's assessment is that there's actionable output. Mm-hmm. And in our assessment, like, teams can be red, yellow, or green, but it's like, obviously there's a lot of politics and a lot of optics there. So nobody wants to be red. but like, let's say all of your engineers are offshore and then all of your QA is offshore in another office. So there's no way within the team that you can get something done, right? And you have to be able to separately escalate organizational impediments. And I think what this does is kind of dig into areas of capability, knowledge, and maturity. So I think this is a very mature assessment and really well done. There's a lot that can be learned from the process.
Yeah, I'd agree, Mick. I think the other thing that he does is I think he does a pretty good job of setting it up. And, you know, in some of his other writings, he talks about the intent, right? And as coaches, we're all about intent and what's going on. And so, you know, we're not just assessing for the sake of assessment, although we do need baselines, but it's an awareness standpoint, right? Hey, where are we? Where do we want to go? And I think it really aids in the conversation. And I think what's the phrase I'm looking for? I think it is a good compromise with leadership. And I'm trying to be nice about this, right? With, hey, we need to track it red, yellow, green. And yet, okay, I'm going to give you some data, but I want you to understand how we can use that data. It's not just data for data's sake, because I totally agree, right? You can make things red, yellow, green. And again, we're still, I think historically in many organizations, red is bad, right? We don't look at red as an opportunity. It's like, hey, this makes it really easy. Let's go fix this. And how great will things be? We're still not there. And so I think being able to look at assessments, set it up and talk about it, have a new way of talking about assessments with the product world, I think is just a great opportunity. And then we can come back to everything else that we do. So I really like the way that he tees it up. And hopefully people are talking about it in that way.
Yeah, I love that, Chris. You know, that red is actually not the worst color if it's being used in the right way, right? You know, red in the fourth quarter, you're down by 2 touchdowns. That's a bad color, right? Red because we didn't get the first down. You know, let's go figure that out. That's a good color. We call that racing to red. So we want to find that red. But you know, so when you think about these assessments and these coaching plans, anybody using coaching plans? Have you implemented those?
I've leveraged coaching. We didn't call them coaching plans. We basically called them, it was, again, going back more on the development. At one point in my career, I coached lawyers, believe it or not, attorneys. And so building a development plan for them, you know, in terms of skills. Obviously, they understand all the legal aspects and all the training they need around that, but developing their communication skills, their presentation skills, things like that, their sales, believe it or not, skills. So more development plans, not personal improvement plans. Personal improvement plans are, what do they call those? Performance improvement plans. Those are almost as close to an assessment.
So Chris, so Chris and I worked together at Wells Fargo, and we worked for a particular leader that was very open about he doesn't care, didn't want to get into that whole development of people kind of thing. He just develop yourself kind of stuff. Anybody else have that same experience, and how frustrating can that be?
Very frustrating. Or they have no time for your development.
Right.
Or to support it. Mm-hmm.
How does that not empower you?
Definitely turns you into a mercenary, right? You're only working to fulfill the goals of what's on the board, right? You just become a ticket monkey in some way, shape, or form, right? Like if they don't care about you, why would I care about them?
So let's make that the theme of today's first book club, Ticket Monkey. Didn't expect that. That's fantastic. So let's make sure that's a big ticket monkey, because I'm going to use that. But it's absolutely true, right? It's because, so if you're not going to invest in me, you have no plan for me, then, you know, I'm less inspired to go innovate on behalf of you. So let's talk about, what does a good coaching plan look like? You know, what does that feel like, you know, for some of you leaders out there? And Tina, keep me on track. I can go all day.
Fine. Fine. There's a number of tools here that we want to I'd like to talk about, but Does anybody have any comments on where they've been in an organization where they have a real hard, tangible coaching plan? You've developed one. One was developed for you that you could share.
I was a director of engineering at a company that was a capabilities company, and I required everybody who reported to me to tell me what they were going to do for training in the next year. And I literally would start every single one of their one-on-ones and say like, okay, so this is your time. Remember, the only thing I care about right now is you to tell me the thing that I told you 6 months ago you had to tell me. So like that's the way to get to the end of your year and get to the review, where they wouldn't be surprised. But if they hadn't told me how they were going to grow, we were going to have a fight. Right? Like you're definitely not going to get a good review if you have been given 12 months to find some $6,000 to spend to make your life better. Right? Whether that's in your house, that's on video, I don't care. But like, let's figure out how we can grow whatever skill it is that's going to support you over the next year.
So 2 things there. Number 1, are you hiring?
Yeah.
How important is that to be able to be unlocked to go and have a development plan? But you have to have a plan. So when I was with Wells Fargo Auto, I had a very formal coaching plan that I had with every one of our leaders inside of Wells Fargo, even the head of auto. I'm like, so the coaching plan was like, okay, what problem are you going to solve, or how do you want to improve? And then this was very much wrapped around agile values and principles at the time. What values and principles are being compromised, right now, which is why it's a problem. What is your plan to go do that? And what experiment are you going to run? And so I find, and I shared this with Stephanie early on, like, if we don't think about how we want to improve and get a plan together, how are you going to know you've arrived anywhere, right? So it might be how I landed in Des Moines. So, so we have all those, you got to have a plan together. So I love what you do there, Rob. You make it about them, and let's go ahead and let's help them grow. And then you're empowering those teams, and you're helping middle leaders, or that frozen middle, stop being the frozen middle. They're more about the people, helping them grow. And now you're off to making better products. So Tina, what's next?
And I just want to comment on that. We talked a little bit about the one-on-one, and I will say personally, reviewing that one-on-one, he talked about, what an effective one-on-one is, and the anti-patterns, where you go into your one-on-one and your leader does all the talking and basically tells you, gives you all these tasks. And I know some folks had made those comments. I think the other thing I just wanted to highlight, and we had an opportunity, Scott and Stephanie and I, this last summer to actually work with the Marty Cagan group at an organization with one of the partners. And it is the most senior leadership's responsibility to make sure that these managers and leaders, they have the opportunity to even grow themselves from a coaching perspective. I mean, you don't necessarily go to school, in college and such, and get coaching classes. I mean, it is a skill. You just don't wake up in the morning and you're a natural coach unless you're Bill Campbell. So I think it's incumbent on the most senior leaders of the organizations to recognize if they're a good coach or not, and to make sure that their leaders, their managers, and their managers' managers have that skill. I mean, because at the end of the day, that is a leader's job, is to be able to coach their organization. If they can't, then they need to bring somebody in to do it for them.
Tina, that was actually one of the most surprising things about the engagement with Cagan's group there, is when Christian came in, and I actually had the privilege of being able to be coached with him every week for an hour, spend time with him. When I first started with it, I thought it was going to be a lot different. I thought we were going to be talking about product and product vision and coaching the organization on how to set up a product council and the coalition and all those other zero-based funding things. It had nothing to do with it. He just wanted to talk about coaching and how you get an organization to move. And we spent the entire time doing that. And it was one of the most valuable experiences of my entire career. I'll never forget it. So coaching is such a big deal, and it's absolutely not about framework, those things. It's about the mindset, right, Tina? You were there.
Yep. And so if anybody, I love the fact that we've added a few books already. We have a book on making the team powerful, and whatever the other one was. But if there's other sources of books out there that folks have read purely from a coaching standpoint, feel free to drop them in. Again, these boards are going to stay up for us to continue to leverage. Quick time check, we're at 6:42 my time, 7:42 on the East Coast. I wanted to we have a lot of content through the rest. We're just talking about the one-on-one. We got the written narrative. We have team and stakeholder collaboration. This is your time. So if there's something subject-wise that you felt something that really spoke to you, seemed really powerful, or just reminded you of something, feel free. What was that in the remainder of this?
I have something, naturally, of course, right? It's on page 10, and it's way down at the bottom. It's section 3. Marty says, he starts talking about, it's one of the funniest parts of the book. And I love how Marty does this. He's so candid about things. He said, Scrum, there's actually a third type of technology team. He gets into it. And he goes, if you're running a process like SAFe, then this is unfortunately you, talking about, not being a product team. And I have no idea why you would want to read this book. I just enjoyed that comment so very much because, process can take over the world, right? In leadership, they love the idea of like, just go do this thing and make me more money, save me more money, improve my quality, mitigate risk, and let's just get on with it, right? But it isn't quite that simple. So I really appreciated what Marty said there and his candidness around, thinking that a process is going to magically solve this.
Just real quick too, Natalie, Samuel mentioned, we will have access. The boards will stay out, and we're going to continue building off the boards. So.
And to piggyback off of that, like the idea of buy-in is really, there's a book called DevOps for Dummies, which would actually be titled Organizational Change through CI/CD and DevOps Practices is really what its title should be. And it talks, Emily talks a lot about the idea of like an hourglass, right? At the top, leadership really wants to believe in change. They believe that you might be able to save their organization, no matter what the change is, agile, DevOps, product mindset, any of that stuff. On the ground, the individuals want you to show them a way to change to be more effective. The problem is that middle management layer where everything's sort of stymied, right? Those people are responsible for delivering the things that need to get done. Like I often talk about it, I worked at the Department of Veterans Affairs for a while, and at the VA, there's this long tail of people being there for a long time. So if you're there for a short period of time, they're like, why would I listen to you? I've been here for 10 years. I'm going to be here for 10 more years. You're not going to be here, right? And that was the mindset that we spent a lot of. So like your job, sometimes in organizational change like that is really just, it's therapist, but it's partially like just banging your head into the wall until they hear you. But it's this interesting aspect of that hourglass shape, right? Like the C-suite, the deputy secretary and secretary want this change to happen. The people on the ground who you're saying that you can help them want that change to happen. The people in the middle are tasked with delivering, whether it's, for Congress, for the veterans, for whatever, they are much more risk averse in that approach to change.
Everybody wants change. Nobody wants to change.
So we're about. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, it reminds me of a passage from Lean UX, which is from Jez Humble, who's a big DevOps guy. And they talk about, when you start to come in with Lean and DevOps and these notions of like empowering teams and how exactly the kind of thing that Robbie's talking about, it's like how uncomfortable people are when they're out of the command and control mode. And what a paradigm shift, and they don't even think it's possible, and they're just hoping to kill it so it'll just go away. And there's still some kind of critical mass I think that has to develop there, but I'll get the actual quote because it's actually absolutely mind-blowing, and I copied it down because it could refer to anybody dealing in any legacy situation and how to deal with these people and how they by nature become risk averse to be successful in the environment they're in. So let me see if I can grab that and share that with the group.
Fantastic.
That's awesome.
I'd like to, as we're kind of winding down here in the next 10, 12 minutes, first, if there was something that you definitely felt like you needed to talk about, you had a question, continue to use the boards. Natalie will be monitoring those. Scott and I will be, and we can bring that up. We wanted your feedback on the use of the board, the dialogue, and feel free to share now or share on the board. Either or. This community is really it's about you. It's about us just improving and sharing content. The other thing I want to mention is that we are going to do this every other Thursday. And the first question is, and we might put a poll out there, and I might ask Natalie to do that, is if the time change would be better, if we should move it forward. We've had a few folks from Europe ask if we could move it forward a couple of hours. And then the other is we're not going to do as much content in our next session. I'd rather focus on staffing. So staffing the product team, so chapters 26 through 36. And talk a little bit more, just focus on that. So we'll send an email out along with it, and we'll have the board, and we'll continue to update the board. But could we get some initial feedback, some thoughts? Let it rip.
I like that it's interactive and you can go back to it and look at it and add to it.
It's like a Miro 101, right? For people who haven't been exposed to it before, I think is also a good part of this. It's a tool you will probably come across.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually saw today that Miro is the #2 hottest platform to do this on in the world right now. So well played, Natalie. And can we just get a shout out to Natalie for I don't know how she's keeping up with this thing. It's a 7:45 her time, 7 to 8, and she's killing it.
Thank you, guys. I'm enjoying this. This is how I learned the fastest from the community. And what I found that if we can have it more of a asynchronous communication going on, we can have a deeper, richer, broader, more diverse conversation. So that's why I'm doing this. It was incredible. Stories that I heard a lot about the old pain that I had with my clients in the past, including SAFE. That was a nightmare. That was just a nightmare to have SAFE for bigger clients. Now I enjoying more of a matured product company, so I don't have the same pains, but I hear your pains, guys.
So a question I would have, Tina, this is out to the group, and I've been pinging people individually, just like, is this time valuable? Would we, is there anything we can do to improve this? Was the conversation worth it? Would it be awesome if Tina could kind of pull some strings and maybe get Marty or Christian here, to visit? Would that be something she could do? I know Christian would probably figure something out, but, would that be kind of cool?
Yeah, that'd be phenomenal. I mean, Christian was on an episode of a podcast called Product Love.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you guys heard that, but I think I've listened to that like 5 times, and it's just unbelievable how articulate he is about digital transformation, and the fact that you were coached by him is just kind of mind blowing. So, yeah.
Well, we'll have to share how that all happened, Tina. Because and actually COVID presented an opportunity that we wouldn't have had for many, maybe a couple months or many years, because they're so popular. And so now he's on, now we chat, and he's interested in where we're going. And for some crazy reason, he decided to coach me personally. I don't know what I did right, but
what you did wrong.
Right? Maybe this is all wrong, but,
this guy needs a lot of help, right?
No, it was everything. Universe was aligned appropriately.
Yeah.
SVPG, they weren't ready to go online yet, and they didn't have the mechanism to do it. And we happened to have the facility, and I happened to have the client that had an open mind and willing to jump in. And it was a little rocky, believe me, taking it all online. But and I also had the opportunity to actually work with Chris Jones too. So it was a good summer, let's say.
And I did get his approval. He is okay with me calling him my coach. So I'm putting that out everywhere. But there were some. I have a wall of Christian quotes.
Yeah, Christianisms. Yeah,
Christianism. But you know what? How else can we make this valuable for you all?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, feel free if you guys want to ping either one of us, any of us, one-on-one. Be happy to talk more about just your feedback or some of the struggles that you're dealing with, or maybe you have some tools and techniques. I think we got a lot of great people, a lot of smart people on this call tonight, and would love to hear what you're doing and how you're doing it, and so that we can share it.
I'm a big believer in community, so I just want to say thank you for pulling this together. I think that is the thing is the most important, is having a back channel that you can reach out and say like, hey, I have this problem, or hey, I have this idea. That is a huge benefit of events like this. So thank you.
You're welcome. Absolutely.
Yeah, appreciate your contribution. And we're an open book here, so you can get a hold of me really anytime. I love this stuff. Tina and I have been doing the Inspired kind of book tour here a couple of different times. Stephanie's conducting one, and the Empowered is a big deal. We have a great network, and we want this to be our new network too. So let's continue the dialogue. And if you have any improvements, like I think we're going to look at like Natalie mentioned, changing the time a little bit so we get some more of our European friends together. And so I think that'll help out too. But add, maybe we have maybe somewhere in the Miro board, like ideas for improvements and stuff like that. So maybe we can do something like that to capture that. That's all.
Yeah,
I got.
we do have sections, so people please go ahead and the board just read the stickies, find the at the end you'll find the spot for feedback. Please share feedback, so next time we would even make it better.
Yeah.
I will make a shameless plug here for our organization. We have a phenomenal product coach. His name is Pete Anderson. Feel free to look him up on LinkedIn. He is rolling out a product academy, and it's an immersive experience, and it's not a robot-based training, it's more team-based. And it's an 8-week program that you literally bring your work to the academy. There's a subject on Monday that he teaches, and then he asks that you bring in up to 3 additional members of your team. It could be a stakeholder, it could be an engineer, it could be a designer. And at the end of those 8 weeks, you've got a backlog, you've got a process, and there's a link there. Check it out. I'd love your feedback on it, actually. Go take a look at it, and if you want to hear more about it, feel free to give me a buzz, and we can talk about it. Again, he's been going through a discovery process over the last 3 months, just really iterating through it. And what are the struggles? And that's why he didn't want to do a specific product manager specific training. You want to make sure it's focused on the team, and it's very immersive. He too he's pulled a lot from some of the well-known, obviously the SVPG group, from Jeff Patterson, from there's a lot of different influences on this, and I'd love some feedback if anybody's interested in looking at it.
And I'm getting ready, and I'll talk about this more some other time. Getting ready to work for a competing organization, but I will say.
No, Scott.
Pete has got some really great experience. He's been a part of that Target Dojo thing. He's got some of the stuff that is more cutting edge and things. So it's a good program. So I recommend taking a look at that. I have no connection to it other than say that I know it's quality. So book club number 1.
All right, guys. Thank you so much tonight. We really appreciate you participating.